Deep Impact and Armageddon. These two films are often compared because of their similarity in subject matter and congruent release. Deep Impact is seen as the greater, and Armageddon the lesser, by popular opinion. Yet, why is that? Deep Impact is the conventional movie. It approaches everything as though it were, quote, real, unquote. It is, quote, scientific, unquote. And it has a plethora of characters, juggling 3 different narratives at once as though they were all of great importance. Armageddon is bombastic, an unscientific straight line vectoring up at the speed of shrapnel out of the mind of its explosive director. This is indeed an oversimplification of the two, as Armageddon has numerous characters as well and is also conventional in its drama. But the important part of this is that they are both simple films. They are not deep or greatly intelligent works. And because one of them is seen to be at least, quote, intellectual, unquote, that myth must first be dispelled. Deep Impact sucks, okay? This movie is poorly written, poorly acted, poorly edited, and abysmally shot. There is maybe a handful of acceptable shots in this entire movie. The colors are washed out, drab, dull. What else must I say to explain to you that this looks like every other Hollywood movie shot from the last 16 years before its release? Every shot is weak. Some are moderately well framed, but the whole result is never entirely beautiful. There's always something wrong in every somewhat good shot. The acting, brother, this is some corny shit. The main character of this insipid film is a woman and a journalist who doesn't like her father. Wow. I'm so glad every scientific movie about science has a woman main character whose entire life, or at least the part of her life in the narrative of the film, revolves around her father. And because she's a woman who is smart and knows things, she figures out there's an asteroid, a comet, because it is an icy body, not a rocky or metal body, hurtling towards Earth that's gonna kill everyone. Now, we get the other plot line with the epic president Schmorgan Schreeman. And hey, there it is, another compelling performance where he performs as an actor, just out there performing. There's also Frodo, who gives the second best performance, but whose narrative is written rather incredulously. Finally, the astronauts, possibly the only outright good part in Robert Duvall's performance. So out of 3 different sections of the film, only one part of one section is even close to good, and none of the sections are shot well overall, or scored well overall, or edited well overall, or are in their final state overall, acceptable or overall meritorious in any other way. So what the fuck? How is this film considered the better of the two? It is vacuous. I would like to get to the deeper artistic intentions of this film, despite its vacuousness, since it is so barren and fruitless in the aesthetics with which it tries to communicate them, that it is closer to a manual of liberal modernist tomfoolery than a piece of actual art. For what is the worth of man to the director of Deep Impact? For Deep Impact, for Mimi later, the defense of the human race is an exercise in futility. Heroism here is the defense of a nebulous group of animals bound together by circumstance of speciation. It is the defense of bureaucracy, corruption, and the decadence of Washington and its infiltrators, which are, of course, all necessary evils which must be preserved for the sake of servile, quote, humanity, unquote. In Deep Impact, the human species are seen as merely creatures, and though our deeds to each other might be incredible in fact, the artistic representation of them is just as dull as to betray the mind of the author. Let's talk specifically about the concept of love depicted in Deep Impact and the artistic significance of it. The love of journalist woman for her father, first of all. How is it depicted? A father and daughter embracing in the face of a tidal wave. They are certainly doomed. 2 generations in a dead end. Her mother already died alone by suicide. Yet the actions of the other 2 members of the family are also suicidal. She drives out to meet her dad, whose mistress left him, and then they both just die. If I were her father, I'd have told her to get on that stupid helicopter. By the way, the helicopter's leaving. That's one of the few okay shots in the movie. The straw thing was stupid, though. Who is seriously going to disagree with putting the women and children first on their way to safety? They just leave this woman and her child to die. Is that love? Is that love? This is that liberal modernist conception of love, where children are so important to protect and can't be separated from their families until, of course, they don't matter, and then who cares? Just leave them to die, right? We must be servile and submit to whatever law comes up out of the humanist mass of humanity at any given time, no matter who it comes from. The journalist must get to safety, and who would be there to stop her? I'm focusing on this stupid crap too much since she gives up her seat anyways, but let's get to the final moments, in which she recalls, of all things, a perfect little quaint, quiet memory.
I remember that we were right over there, and that's when Mom got that picture of the house. Perfect happy day.
Amazing. So compelling that she remembered that awesome moment in her awesome life. It's hollow. There's no spirit or acknowledgement of spirit. This is the enemy of the soul. Thinking that your whole life will be summed up in your little quaint memories. Worthless. The second tale of The Boy and the Asteroid depicts something with greater gravity than the first, but not with only a modicum more tact and artisanship. The accidents of the narrative I once again object to, because, let's be honest, any reasonable father is tossing his daughter onto that bus in the hopes of her survival. He's not just going to be, quote, chill, unquote, about her staying home with them to face certain doom. The Boy is a more compelling narrative from the outset due to the fact that the accidents of it actually pertain to the subject of the overall film. A woman loving, reconnecting with her dad, and also her mother killing herself. This could be literally any movie. You could put this in any movie. Any catastrophe could be this movie. It could certainly be a better movie, too. Elijah Wood is... he's okay here, but the girl is not that great, and neither are any of the other actors portraying dramatic agents as much as they are portraying furniture for this boy and the girl to run around. Since marriage here is a central element of this tale, the union of the two souls, the beginning of a life together, we as appraisers must question with what tact is it brought forth onto the screen, just as godlessly as the last section, and once again with only one close to good shot. Amazing, just so great. Surely this film is the better of the two, right? The fact that the parents are such non-characters is more due to the editorial compression of the entire film than the writing itself. Though I imagine if you extended this storyline by even 15 minutes, you wouldn't get much more substance. It's awfully vapid. A note chosen well, but played flat, when the playing is what matters more. The astronauts. Flawed family men for the most part. Some of them godless, some of them not. The spaceship, though, Messiah, come on. Corny ass name. That's kind of a microcosm for the script, though. Giant comet, because it's an icy body hurtling towards Earth. A fucking spaceship's gonna save us. Sure, dude. None of the characters here are well written except the white man and Robert Duvall. Their relationship, their dynamic, is far better than the insipid, asinine news people. An old sailor taking experienced mariners to a place they've never been before. A treacherous journey, which, how many times do I need to say it, could have easily been its own movie. Imagine if the whole of Deep Impact was dedicated to the cool nerd approach of redirecting an a comet, with nuclear weaponry rather than this mishmash of poorly shot crap that the film actually is. The pointless adventure of the spacecraft is full of silly mishaps and fun little accidental deaths. They hoped for the best and it didn't work out. They fail and have to sacrifice themselves to blow up the asteroid. The astronauts sure do love their kids. The childless ones thanklessly died back on Wolf Biederman. Oh, and that's the name of the comet, by the way, not that it matters. Keep in mind, these astronauts are supposedly ready to die for the entire human race. But, of course, there are no Europeans, despite the borderless ideals of the liberal author. Even within the narrative, it would make sense to have at least one, besides the Russian. But, as I say, objecting to the accidents of the narrative is generally not substantial, though I do relish the expression of dissent. The chemistry of Oren and Fish, though, there's certainly something there in the transmission of the astronautical tradition from generation to generation, dramatically portrayed quite acceptably, but not exceptionally. What's the point of all this? What is the fucking point of Deep Impact? Why is it a movie? The comet is there, but why should we save ourselves? We shall bookend the discussion of this liberal aesthetic sewage by returning to the futility of the mere creature. To Deep Impact, to Miss Later, the man saving himself is expressing only an animalistic need to survive that is endemic to all things. He is not special. He is the rule of the beasts. It denies the true faith. When Morgan Freeman's character says,
"Whomever you hold that to be."
What is this? What do you mean, whoever? There is only one answer to whoever God is, but Deep Impact cannot say who that is. Spiritually, it is too weak, because it believes itself to be a beast only, and not a man. This expression of survival comes also not from the acts of the few who dare, but rather from this nameless horde of beings Deep Impact might call Earthlings. Where is the supposed intellect of this film except in the alleged scientific accuracy of its script? Rocket science portrayed accurately does not cinema make. Does a true intellectual sacrifice become of math problems done right? No. The love of wisdom begins with the love of the Lord God, Jesus Christ, who is the author of wisdom. Because Deep Impact sees this planet as but a godless mass of in particular animals, whom are differentiated only by insubstantial, accidental things, and not by truly essential, even noble characteristics by which we take on from our agency. It denies the very things that make life worth surviving. This is one of the errors of liberalism, of modernism. They say that we are alike not by faith, which is a positive assent of the will, an action differentiated from others by truth, nobility, and fulfillment of the human function, but by vacuous ties of speciation, which in themselves have no moral quality of good or evil, one way or another. It's everyone together on Earth protesting death. And protest is the appropriate word, as the film, through its cinematic language, does not give the impression of a triumphant holy sword raised against extinction, but rather a frail protest, a hollow appeal by dumb, deaf, soulless apes. It is dull, senseless filmmaking. Deep Impact is a 2 out of 10, at most. Armageddon, on the other hand, what a picture. Motion, energy, color, and melodrama. The great solution to real drama. The fool-faced Deep Impact, with plays for substance among actors whom later turned into decoration, is put to shame. Is Armageddon a little stupid? Yes. It has problems, the first being the editing of the film. So much of it is dedicated to this rather impure love story between the two poorly directed actors. Most of the footage included is not actually relevant to the artistic vision of the film. Though ultimately, who am I to say this? To say none of it is aesthetic, that none of the footage is excellent and beautiful, what a denial that would be. To the desolate wastes of Deep Impact cinematography is Armageddon the glorious and plentiful plains of Elysium, the glorious sights of the Empyrean. The Steve Buscemi going crazy parts should have been cut a little bit more, so could some of the beginning. In fact, I would have cut out everything between the prologue and the rig hitting oil. That, however, is my decision, and it is a trademark, perhaps even an auteur signature of Michael Bay's movies, that they are edited way too little and quite long for the type of movies they are. Despite this, there is a difference between having a movie that is simply long but cohesive and a movie that is long and full of incomprehensible artistic decisions. Deep Impact is the latter, and Armageddon the former. We must ask ourselves, if he did, though, cut all this crap, wouldn't Armageddon be a rather humorless film? Wouldn't the character, the dramatic qualities of the drilling crew be diminished? And the tone of the film of the first act would change significantly. All actual, demonstrable changes, which are not only dramatic, but also aesthetic, as much of the first act is coated in an orange hue, while the rest of the film is blue. This juxtaposition of colors in modern commercialized Hollywood was prevalent at the time and is still to some degree. But Michael Bay takes it to the extreme. in a clearly purposeful manner. Earth is warm and orange. Space is cold and icy blue, as are the things pertaining to space. But the things pertaining to men's hearts, our works and hopes and ideals, are green. The third color of the film is thus arguably green. In its appearance in numerous indoor scenes, the fact that Dottie exhibits a teal turquoise glow, thus a combination of blue and green, and various equipment and instruments with green readings. Also, the fact that the countdown timers are green. Blue, green, and orange. Quite the aesthetic trifecta. The fact that we can even know this, even see this, Armageddon being such a visually juicy film, it certainly has over its dry, bland, flavorless opponent, Deep Impact. Furthermore, Armageddon moves. Deep Impact does not, and it isn't artistic in its stillness either. Its stillness is a fault, and not an intentional decision. It is a fault unknown to it, carried over almost paternally from its commercial precedents. Hollywood, after the early 80s, became hyper-commercialized and cracked down on expression, such that it turned out crap like Pretty Woman and Primal Fear. Armageddon is but a hopeful matchlight in its contemporary cavern of utter darkness. And it is an expression of the director's idea, regardless of whether the director, Michael Bay, thinks this idea is for the sake of the audience or for the sake of a vision which they might share and understand as an audience. Armageddon is nonetheless clearly an expression of his auteur sensibilities, even if they might be bad in one place or another. We are brought then to the meaning, the artistic intent, and philosophy of Armageddon. We are brought to question the degree to which it demonstrates a love of wisdom, a true love of wisdom. Armageddon, as with its aesthetic and functional qualities as a film, has in its philosophy that thing we call character, identity, cause to exist. Deep Impact says man has no higher function than survival, that there is no great honor to life, and that all ways of death are equal. Armageddon, on the other hand, says that there is something greater than life, and that in all manners of death there are some more honorable, and truly with more intrinsic value. Chief among them, sacrifice. Deep Impact, being godless, can never understand sacrifice for any sake, and in fact, in some cases outright denies it, saying that it is just as legitimate as living for yourself or your own sentiments, even taking your life for the sake of your own sentiments. Armageddon says that sacrifice, the giving of a life for some purpose, is legitimate, virtuous, and honorable. Not only does it, in its reason to exist, say that sacrifice is true, but that it is within the function of the human soul. Spirited are they who put away their sentiments for the sake of others, and take part in the suffering of our Lord. Now, let me say first that Armageddon does not entirely and explicitly confess the true faith, but only a deistic and Americanist one that has only partial heretical understanding of actual metaphysical truth. Thus, it is not as a whole piece an authentic representation of metaphysics, and neither is Deep Impact, but Armageddon is certainly the greater of the two. Both feature impurity in the adulterousness of Teo Leone's character's father, Jeff Lerner, I don't know what his name is, and in the activity of Hound. But it is only Armageddon who affirms the loyalty of the husband to the wife. And among loyalties, it is only Armageddon which affirms the loyalty of the last generation to the next. And it affirms this loyalty as function, not as sentiment. Deep Impact forgets duty, function, for sentiment, forgets godlike, honorable sacrifice, for the satisfaction of creatural wants and mawkishness. Armageddon sacrifices that creatural want for the sake of duty, the function of the soul towards God. This duty is not merely the activity of an animal either. It declares and shouts loud from the rooftops, from the film projectors, that these things we call nations, civilizations, this virtue of the heart called patriotism, is not a pointless differentiation of some men from others, but a firmly purposeful, a noble one. For the crew of the Messiah, their mission is not an act of heroism partaken by the brave-hearted elect, but a purely natural and perhaps even objectionable one, on the grounds of liberal modernism. For the astronautical crew of the Freedom and Independence, and for the scientists and instrumenteers at ground control, this mission to save Earth is an act of patriotism. It is the heroic decision of the free and independent citizens of the United States of America, who have shown themselves to be a group apart, with a unique and historic destiny, different from that of all others in this universal order of faith. This mission sets these men above all others in courage, and as a patriotic act is a glorious work on the part of their nation, that America might have this unique glory, which is the singular path of no one else. Since we are on the topic of patriotism and American heroes, we should discuss the Russian characters present in both films. Deep Impact hardly touches on the Messiah's cosmonaut at all. He is simply there and among this nameless mass of people as a fellow man. He is not singular from the Americans in ideals, objectives, or even history. In contrast, Stomare's cosmonaut possesses all the qualities that make him a different animal but the same beast as the American cosmonauts. The Russian here is depicted as having nobly suffered under Soviet oppressions, surviving in space wisely, but remaining a sort of eccentric hermit. A guide for the heroes who has that technical, almost country-like know-how of a man raised in a cheap Soviet world. Examine also that during and after the destruction of the Russian space station, the cosmonaut Lev acts as a mentor to AJ. But this hero's journey style mentorship is substantially but artistically permutated by the fact that AJ is not the one who makes the ultimate sacrifice, who remains in the highest place as the greatest hero, but actually his father-in-law, Harry Stamper. All this show of similarity in objective, but not ideal, in wisdom, but not experience, demonstrates that Armageddon's patriotism is exclusionary and in accordance with tradition and virtue, but that the Russian here partakes in this act as a hero of a different kind, but not of a different merit. His particularities are not wiped away. He is not submerged in this nameless, borderless mass of humanity, as in Deep Impact, but partaking in his scientific patriotic act, a hero united with comrades in a universal order which does not obliterate, but magnifies those particularities. This great American nation in Armageddon is also portrayed in three parties by the military, the scientists, and the drill crew. The dance of directives, regulations, protocols, and information all contributes to the dramatic tension of the final act. In an interesting choice from Michael Bay, this is perhaps the only time the military in his films is portrayed as explicitly antagonistic in the dramatic aspect of the film. The United States military here is paranoid, impulsive, and obstinate, unwilling to listen to the skilled non-combatant citizens of ground control and the drill crew. To the point that the people who actually know what they're doing, the hero Harry Stamper and his team, are held at gunpoint to face death by nuclear explosion. Unlike Deep Impact, where authority is almost completely unquestioned, while simultaneously being portrayed as corrupt and immoral, Bay in Armageddon eschews such liberal worship of state, choosing instead the true body of the nation, its citizens, to whom the state owes a moral duty of protection, as loyal to mankind, where the administrative state bodies fall prey to fear. While he often portrays American soldiers on the ground as heroes, very few of Bay's films have such an outright negative view of the military as a whole, and it must have been more than coincidence that this of all films is the one to portray them this way, where the rival film, Deep Impact, despite all its baseless humanist, modernist, liberal drivel about loving humanity, still gives unquestioned and servile subservience to a state which it knows is corrupt. Deep Impact, once again, is servile. Armageddon is steel-hearted, and this raw grit, trusting in skills and experience and collaboration with Providence, is surely a greater solace than any bunker a liberal state could offer. In Deep Impact, the comet, because it's a comet, an icy body, wow, so terrifying, right, is called Wolf Biederman, because that's scientific and smart. And Deep Impact is a science-y nerd movie for smart people who feel really smart about movies. It's 7 miles wide, a little baby, but I guess it's gonna blow up the whole universe or something, right? The surface of the comet is smooth and under an open sky, because in real life it would be like that, bro, right? And this is totally real-life science accurate. Is there really a fear of absolute failure when, in the late 90s, the scientists of the entire world could easily obliterate a comet of that size? On the other hand, the asteroid, because it is a rocky and or metallic body, of Armageddon is called Dottie, because Dottie, this guy's wife, is a life-destroying bitch. It's also the size of Texas. Dottie is not Wolf bitch-ass man. Dottie is a dragon, and NASA must deploy its astro chariots to ride forth from the land of the free to slay Fafnir. Armageddon engages in myth-making. Here, our protagonists are not soulless apes chosen by lottery, but knights riding to face doom head-on. They have the right stuff, the stuff of legend. Stamper and AJ here are the polar opposite of Jason and Jenny Lerner. Oh, you didn't know those were the names of those characters? Of course not. Who cares about anyone in Deep Impact? In Jason and Jenny Lerner's tale, there is the same generational animosity we see in Armageddon, but this animosity takes a different form. Essentially, Jenny is mad that her dad abandoned them, or wasn't there for them, or whatever. Daddy issues. Classic woman journalist crap. Nothing deeper than this. Her enmity with her father is emotional, and the basis of his error, his neglect, is also emotional. He wanted a beautiful woman rather than the one to whom he promised his loyalty. Keep in mind, her mother does not, in her final hours, decide to go see her daughter, but decides to kill herself without a second thought the moment she hears the news that people over 50 won't be allowed into the safety bunkers. What the hell kind of mother is this? This is the liberal or modernist mentality that she was exercising her, quote, rights, unquote, as a, quote, individual, unquote. It's sad for Jenny, but ultimately it's just okay and chill because she was stressed out, bro. Her life was over. You see this attitude now with the attempts, some of which have unfortunately succeeded, to legalize euthanasia all over both sides of the Atlantic. Is the father and daughter's path really any different substantially? Not quite, as their decision is a metaphorical euthanasia rather than literal. But if you really reached, you could call this literal euthanasia too, both of them choosing to die for no reason other than shared hopelessness, unity in despair. This is nothing but absolute catastrophe. The total destruction of 2 generations of blood, bonding over mawkish memorial crap. Stamper and AJ choose to be heroes rather than be euthanized. Their heroism is not something held in common with the world, but unique only to them. And not unique only in type of virtuosity, but also in the level of virtuosity that they have attained in their skill. They are the best of the best at what they do, and moreover, they are the best of the best in virtue as well, by partaking in this historic and perilous adventure to save mankind. Grace, Stamper's daughter, also partakes in this noble act, but as a woman, not as a man. Whereas in Deep Impact, women take the place of men, or are given up to weakness of demeanor.
I don't have anywhere else to go.
Freedom, come in.
In this way, we can also compare Jenny's selfish act to Grace's selfless and more properly feminine act, rather than how Jenny's personal objectives devolve into pathetic opining for lost memories, into cowardice. Grace has a devotion and loyalty to her parent, which transforms into true adulthood as she finds her own place in life at AJ's side, with her father's final approval and blessing. She should be here. She has to. Where else would she go? Here is her place of bravery as a woman, the true sacrifice of the old for the new, which is only portrayed in Armageddon, is the true fulfillment of Harry's responsibility as a father to his daughter, as a boss to his subordinates, as a citizen to his nation. In the final hour, the climax, Harry Stamper, who previously didn't trust AJ with either the rig or his daughter, finally sees what AJ is ready to do as a hero and a husband, and makes the decision as his father-in-law to take his son-in-law's place, to sacrifice himself, saving AJ, Grace, and all mankind. Stamper is not merely giving up his life in the place of another, a negative act, but positively fulfilling his destiny. This sacrifice, this honor, is his alone, and it is not a popular but singular act. One man, quite literally standing above the entire human race, putting his life on the line for his family, his friends, his country, for from this place looking upward on this planet and on his daughter, knowing she will remain because of him. There lies the difference between them. Deep Impact is directed downward. It is nothing but a vehicle for narrative, a race to the bottom. Not only is the philosophy of the film creatural, but the film itself, in its aesthetic qualities, is creatural. But we are not merely creatures, are we? Armageddon says we are not, and in its aesthetic nature, wherein is the essential function of the film, it is more than creatural. It is cinema. It is directed upward toward the noble qualities of men, that we might remember our duty of charity toward God. Do you understand? In Armageddon is the hour of triumph.